Sit back, relax, and strap it down. White Sox baseball coming your way.
Hey, how's everyone doing out there for a World Home Media presentation of Major League A-Hole, Sox Type Thing, and In the Hole, presented by Revolution Brewing. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. You are In the Hole with Major League A-Holes. This is also Sox Type Thing, episode number 14.
The Paul Konerko episode.
I've definitely had him top of the list, but I was also wanted to get your thoughts if it could possibly be Bill Melton's episode. I didn't realize he was number 14 until I looked at the full history of your jersey list, but
yeah,
I think it's got to be Konerko.
Gotta be Paulie K for me. He's right up there on the wall, sign.
Yeah,
right there.
World champion.
Of you viewing at home.
Yes, world champion. I mean, how can you not? He is probably, besides Burley, he's probably one of my favorites White Sox ever.
Yeah, just went about his business.
That's right. Yeah, so things have developed this season, this week.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah, I think we have some clarity as to the future of the White Sox in 2022. It is essentially over. Similarly, I think you still have a chance in the wild card. I think you're not mathematically eliminated.
Yeah, we're not mathematically eliminated.
Well,
but mentally we are.
We'll talk about how we got there. Your Giants are in a similar situation. I don't think you're mathematically eliminated from the wild card either, but it's pretty much over.
Really? Oh, I thought it was.
So your guys are finally joining my teams that have been eliminated for quite some time now. So I think we could officially call this the regular season wrap-up episode of this simulcast between In the Hole and Sox Type Thing. We'll get into that. We'll get into what we think our team should prioritize in this off season. What should be at the top of the list? Our off season to-do lists for each of the franchises to put us in a better position to compete and do some damage in 2023. We also had some major milestones, or on the precipice of major milestones that we touched briefly on last week with Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols. So got some thoughts about that. But let's go ahead and jump into the news.
Wow.
It's been a week, quite a week for you.
Well, the Sox, have we won since we last talked?
I don't think
they have, right?
We did this last Monday, or was it last Tuesday? And you have not won since. So.
We have not won since we talked, and it was all about you got to sweep the Guardians, and then we go from there. And as Smitty has said over and over again, you should be able to sweep the Tigers. Well, it's
like a given that you would sweep the Tigers, and the only question mark is what you do against the Indians, but failed.
The Guardians, you owe $5 into the jar.
Did I say Indians again?
You did.
Wow. I had Guardians in my mind. That's crazy.
Wow.
It's funny how that works.
But the Sox, I think this is the best way to say it. Definitely in the Guardians series, and I did not see one game of the Tigers series, but in the Guardians series, the Guardians basically everything that was wrong with the White Sox season, outside of still being able to actually hit home runs, but not enough to win ball games. But everything else that was wrong with the White Sox all year was exploited and sort of culminated in that Guardian series. And it was almost fitting. It was a fitting way to kind of put the nail in the coffin for the AL Central. The Guardians, it's funny, the White Sox were criticized for not hitting a lot of homers this year. The Guardians don't hit a ton of homers either, but they will hit a single, and the guy from first will be on third base in the blink of an eye. And it's just so reminiscent to me. The Guardians this year were so reminiscent to me of those Ozzie Guillen, when he managed the White Sox. He used to call the Twins the Piranhas.
I think he called them the Piranhas, but
we got the point. And they just did not go away. They'd always be nipping, and they did all the little things right. And that's exactly, the Guardians don't make a ton of mistakes,
Yeah.
and they capitalize on every opportunity. And it's really I don't think they're going to last long in the playoffs because their style of baseball isn't centered around what they're going up against.
It's been enough to beat the most mediocre division in baseball, but
the worst division in baseball.
Yeah, once you get into the upper echelons, I don't think they're going to have enough firepower or starting pitching potentially. But
yeah, but we'll see.
It'll be fun to see them try.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see them try. But yeah, so I mean, that was bad enough. But to your point, we were not math, and I think we were like a magic number of 2 or elimination of 2 from the wild card, probably, or something like that.
I think it's 3. Yeah, okay. The elimination number.
So, the wild card was still like looking okay, and then the powerhouse Motown rolls into town. Motown, that's right. Detroit Rock City rolls into town, and the White Sox just look completely flat, and any good pitching was wasted, and all bad pitching was exploited, and errors, and everything just kind of propelled. Everything that went wrong in the Guardian series just continued right through the Tiger series.
Tigers feasted on your bullpen. I mean, your starting rotation was pretty much lights out, and then we'd get into the bullpen and just dominate. I think it was Saturday they scored 5 runs in the 8th inning, including Javi Baez quieting the crowd once again. He loves being the villain on the south side there, as he hears a cascade of boos every time he comes to the plate. I saw the stat, at least through Saturday. I think he went 0 for 5 on Sunday, but his stats through Saturday, at least, this year against the White Sox, he's batting .348 with 9 RBI, 4 home run. It might be 13 extra base hits, I think, or maybe it's 9 extra base hits. It's a lot, whatever's going on. I think it's probably his best numbers against any single opponent. So there's something about the heading back to Chicago, his second home besides Puerto Rico. I don't think he thinks of Detroit in the same way he thinks of the city of Chicago, since he was kind of raised there with the Cubs. But I think he also feasts on being the center of everyone's attention and ire and anger. He thrives on it. But the other notable moment in the series came on Sunday when Riley Green made probably the second best catch in guaranteed rate field history after was it
Dwayne Wise?
Dwayne Wise,
yeah,
made the best catch to cinch the perfect game from Mark Burley. Similarly, Riley Green made an incredible catch in center field that kind of saved the game for them. I think if your White Sox had gone up 3-0 with Dylan Cease on the mound, I'm not sure the Tigers would have been able to come back and eventually win. But the irony was, as he was jumping, he inadvertently made the perfect Michael Jordan Jumpman pose, just like the logo. He had the exact same posture as he's making the catch. So that's been used against White Sox social media in several ways. But I thought that was just too fun and ironic to not to mention. I did notice there were a couple fans reaching over the fence trying to interfere with him making the brilliant catch. But
desperate times, Smitty, yeah. Desperate times.
Yes.
Hey, did you see the Javi, before we move on to Javi Baez, did you see the post-game interview with him?
I did.
And how he, they basically, said, hey, you must love coming to Chicago and like rising to the occasion and winning. And he said, well, at least on this side of town. So it seems like he wouldn't want to play the villain if the Tigers squared off against the Cubs.
Yeah, I don't think he would enjoy that as much, because that's his natural home, I think, or his second home, like I said. So yeah, that makes sense. He thought that question through for sure. I hadn't thought of it that way, but yeah, he definitely loves pissing you White Sox off. like you said, you didn't watch much of the series. I caught highlights. I saw some of the game. There's a lot going on this weekend. Lots of awesome sports action, football, college football, NFL, NASCAR, everything happening. But I did catch some of it. But it was kind of an afterthought. I was certainly going into the series thinking Tigers had a good shot of getting swept. I would never have dreamed they were going to be the agent of doom. Essentially, they pretty much ended the White Sox season and CairoMania.
Yeah,
Sadly, CairoMania finally comes to an end.
CairoMania is not enough to rise the Sox above all their aforementioned inefficiencies or deficiencies or whatever you want to call
I thought
them.
it was the answer. It seemed like the answer as of last week, and then that I made that fancy intro music, and it all went to shit. I blame myself.
But as you and I both had the same thought, the Sox over the last 6 games are like they got in a car accident and all of the players' arms got ripped off, like drummer Rick Ellen from Def Leppard. We actually shared the same exact thought, everyone.
I thought I was very clever sending you that meme or that animated GIF of Def Leppard's drummer with one arm, and you were about to send me the same joke, actually. But
yeah, so I was trying to
diabolical minds think alike.
Yeah, we both have the same sickness.
And we're old.
I think, the main part of that, though, is, Cairo has been part of the coaching staff, now a coaching staff that has in recent, as we discussed last week, may have been undermined by their manager. But I mean, Tony's an old dude. He doesn't have time to run around and cover every bit of coaching they're doing, like for fielding and everything like that. So, some of that has to be put back onto the coaching staff. And I think one thing is for sure, Miguel Cairo is not the answer. In fact, I don't know that anyone on the coaching staff outside of maybe a couple people, if I had my way, would even be here next year. But that will be addressed when we get to the list of off-season things. One thing that did become clear, though, this week was TLR will not be returning to the team this year.
The end of LaRussaPalooza?
Yeah, conveniently after they got swept by Cleveland, it was announced that doctors would not clear him. So it was doctors would not clear LaRussa to return this season to manage. Hahn was asked about his future, and he said we would address that in the offseason.
Which
and
that conversation should have happened 3 weeks ago, but
yeah, and
I guess we got there eventually.
Yeah, and all medical information would be kept personal per
Tony's
requests, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, now it doesn't affect the team. There's not necessarily because of you're being knocked out of the playoffs, essentially, but we don't need to know any more about Tony's condition other than he's doing okay or whatever. But that's certainly a personal matter. But when it was hanging over the team, whether he would come back or wouldn't, that was certainly a public interest. So I could see why they've made that shift, and could have been that way. It could have been handled that way all along, but for whatever reason, through stubbornness and arrogance, TLR chose not to.
Yeah. So now it's, I really don't care much about the remainder of the season. I mean, they're not going anywhere.
Welcome to my world.
Outside of, for me though, and I think for every White Sox fan out there, this has to be the most disappointing season in White Sox history. The thing I find funny, and I would be concerned a little bit if I was a Guardians fan, is that the Guardians have such a chip on their shoulder that while celebrating their victory, they started the chant "fuck the White Sox" in their celebratory chant. And to be quite honest, I could care less about the White Sox at that point. It should be
Boy,
all
you
about
struck a nerve, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, like what's next. I get the fun little social media things, and the way this article that I forwarded to Smitty today that I started to
That's
read,
me.
that guy over there, in case you're watching at home. But I was like, oh, this is, I find it all humorous to be honest. I'm not like I'm sure there's people who are fucking pissed off by it, but I just think it's all funny. And the social media stuff was hilarious, and it was totally like I got it, and then making fun of the podcasts and all that stuff makes total sense. But if you just won the AL Central, why are you even thinking about the White Sox in your celebration?
I guess I could see. I mean, Elvis Andrews certainly gave them the classic bulletin board material, because when he just predicted that the Guardians would crumble under the pressure of the White Sox assault.
I'm sorry. I agree.
I think that's where it started.
I get that part, but like just chanting "fuck the White Sox," like, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
It's not how I would want my team focusing at this point. I wouldn't, if the Sox had won the AL Central, I wouldn't want them chanting "fuck the Twins" or "fuck the Guardians," but whatever.
You would want them to say "fuck the Tigers," though,
or the Tigers, or the Royals. Let me just be clear. I would not want them to talk about fucking anyone, especially Tim Anderson. But anyway,
wow.
Actually, and real quick before we move into all of our team's offseason needs, unless you had anything to add about the White Sox, I would just like to say that the good news is, which I think is going to be best for long term for the club. Lewis Roberts been shut down. I don't think Tim Anderson will be back now this season.
That'd be strange. I think to come back with 9 games left in the season. Doesn't seem worth it.
9 meaningless games in the season. He can be 100% healthy. So if there's any somewhat good stuff about this, is you're not going to have any lingering side effects going into next season for some of these guys. I mean, I would even suggest playing Eloy Jimenez on a limited basis at this point too.
Yeah, that's the last thing you need for him to injure himself somehow in this last week.
I mean, if anyone could injure themselves as a DH, it would be Eloy Jimenez.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that moves us gracefully into the off season. Unfortunately, we have 9 games left. I think all of our teams all have 9 games left at this point, just over a week and a half. But I think we have to turn towards 2023 and look to how each of our clubs can get better this offseason. What the top of the list would be for what we want our general managers and presidents to do. And we might as well start right off with your White Sox, because it seems like you have a long list.
You would not think this is a team that was only 1 year removed from the playoffs and expected to run away with the AL Central this year, but the list is longer than I'd like it to be. But a lot of that, or some of that, no, most of it has to do with not addressing the issues this year that need to be done. But first off, you got to start at the manager. They need to deal with the manager issue swiftly and with some due fucking diligence this time in the off season. And again, I continue to lean towards Sandy Alomar as my lead candidate, but
so you're writing off Tony La Russa as your manager 100%.
I think
moving to the front office. Is that his exit plan, or what?
I think his exit plan is due to health reasons. I'm not participating in Major League Baseball activities anymore. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
We need we need someone at the helm that is going to actually hold these people accountable. And that was part of why Miguel Cairo had some limited success there. But we also need to get a coaching staff in there, especially like guys like Daryl Boston and Joe McEwing. They need to go, and they need to get a coaching staff in there that's going to get these guys back to fucking fundamentals like Ozzie Guillen had the team playing in 2005. So I don't know who it is. Like I said, Sandy Elmar's been on my short list for a long time now. So
I've heard you bring that name up before.
That's who I'd like it to be. Outside of that, getting into the field, you have 3 starting pitchers signed going into next year: Cease, Lynn, and Kopech. Gio's contract is up. I'm assuming Gio, wherever he signs, is going to take a 1 year in a kind of, somewhat not at the money that Carlos Rodon got, but he's going to take something in a prove yourself year.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I think it might be worth the White Sox taking a shot, bringing him back. And then you have this long list of pitchers who are going to be available that the White Sox again, it's interesting. So they have $144 million in payroll, right? But against the cap, it's only 108 because of the average annual value of the salaries. And then you take 5.5 off of that right away because they're not going to opt in for Josh Harrison again. So they only have $103 million against a $233 million salary cap. So they can go out and spend some money.
They can, of course, but you've also spent the most money in White Sox history this past year, and it got you to a sub 500 record thus far. So do you think Jerry's willing to, I'm sure he's willing to spend some money, but do you think he's going to spend up towards the cap?
But they didn't do anything. I mean, the money that's invested is in the guys. A lot of it was invested in the guys that didn't perform. So that's,
I know.
That's what you have to decide. Like, we have to bring in some. You can't say I'm going to fill up my this because it didn't work this year. Here's what they did. They said, we're going to solve our right field problem with Andrew Vaughn, AJ Pollock, Adam Engel, and Gavin Sheets. And while that produced the aggregate produced a decent amount of power, it produced 0 defense. So you got to go get a real veteran presence right fielder.
Well, you didn't answer my question though. Is Jerry going to spend even more money than he did this year? The most that the White Sox have ever spent.
Yeah, I think he is. And even if he doesn't, they spent 193. That's still they're committed at 144. So that gives them 50 to 60 million to invest somewhere. So are they going to go get Jacob deGrom? Probably not. But there's, Chris Bassett, Aaron Nola, Evaldi. Those are names. I don't think Rodon would come back here. In fact, he's rumored to maybe be going to the north side of town, possibly.
I think he'd be scared to come back. I mean, considering what they did to his body his whole time here.
Well, that's fair. But, so if Jerry really wants a world championship, he needs to realize he fucked up with LaRussa, let them go get a fucking manager, a real manager, and say, go get me a world championship. And, we could be talking about the time. I think the shortstop class that's going to be free agents this year may be essentially better than last year's. You've got Correa again, you got Trey Turner, you got Swanson, and you got Xander Bogaerts. This could be the year we see Tim Anderson slide over to second base.
Oh boy. And who are you signing amongst that tremendous shortstop class to move Tim over?
Well, I mean, I would think they would probably, the White Sox would go after more like a Swanson for a longer term contract because he's younger.
That's interesting.
But we'll see. I mean, a couple articles I read said the Braves were probably not going to re-sign him. I'm putting
you in the place of as the general manager now, and you can sign who you want. Who you would add to the White Sox?
No, I'd go fucking blow my load. Here's what I would, if I were the general manager of the White Sox, here are the offseason moves I would make if Jerry said, go win me a championship team. I would sign Trey Turner, Aaron Judge, and Jacob deGrom.
I think that's probably what every armchair general manager would say.
Now, realistically,
that's the second part of the question.
What I think they could do is Bassett, Swanson. They have the money to go after Judge. I don't think they would ever do that. I think Nemo or possibly the long coveted Conforto deal could finally happen from White Sox Twitter. But there's also Jock Peterson again. Maybe the third year he'll actually come to the White Sox. But those are all options. But the other teams are going to talk about have even more money to spend. So they're up against the White Sox for all those guys too. So the other thing that's a little bit of a nuisance on the White Sox is I'm very hopeful that Joe Kelly, because he got a late start to the season and was in and out of injuries, this year was more of an anomaly for him and he bounces back. But the other one is, so we got Kelly next year for 9. We got Diekman also for another year, but he's only like 3.5. But that's not really, if their performance is anywhere near what it was this year, it's not going to get it done. But I don't think the Sox are going to invest a lot, in the bullpen. You got Graveman back again. You got
You've
Kelly.
Been investing in the bullpen for years now, and it hasn't really paid off.
Yeah, it seems like everyone they comes in, they fucking fall flat except for Liam Hendricks. Luckily, Garrett Crochet's coming back next year.
That's
so
big. That's huge.
Big. The other thing that wasn't probably on anyone's list because they didn't see it coming in such a dramatic fashion was the $18.25 million investment next year of Yasmani Grandal and just falling off a cliff. And to be honest with you, I don't think the battery of Zavala and Grandal gets it done. So, I'm not suggesting they go after Wilson Contreras or anything like that, because the last thing we need is another 5-year catcher contract where the last year and a half is horrendous. Not saying that is going to happen to Contreras, but, aging catchers are never fun. But there are guys like, Christian Vasquez and Zunino who will be out there who are older but would make a great battery, especially from a defensive standpoint. And that's one of the things I'm getting at. But long story short, I'm gonna end this now, unless you have any more questions for me. Is just that the White Sox have way too much to do for a team that's in their window. And if the window was open 6 feet, it's down to 3 feet now.
Wow.
So if you don't fucking invest now,
what are we doing?
What are we doing? Unless, everyone magically stays healthy and they finally all live up to their potential. Because everyone was paid on their potential and no one's lived up to it.
Well, that actually transitions me perfectly into an asshole question for you this week. I'm going to spring on you, but I think it's probably pretty obvious where I'm going with this, and I've asked this many times in different ways, but with perspective now, when is Rick Hahn going to be held accountable? You mentioned accountability, and I think that's a great word for any organization to have, especially one that's not living up to expectations. And, there's been built-in excuses for Rick Hahn, certainly this year, because in the last 2 years, actually, because he was saddled with a manager he did not want to hire, mainly just because the owner went over his head because he can. But at the same time, when I guess that's just literally my question, when is Rick Hahn gonna be held accountable? What I don't think necessarily this year is the year to hold his feet to the fire, just for the TLR reasons. But he's 10 years in to his general manager career of the White Sox. He has had 2 winning seasons, unless he might have 3 if you guys, I think you're 1 game below 500 right now. you could turn it around this last week, he'd have 3 out of 10 winning seasons. He's 120 games below 500. I did all the math this afternoon. They have 1 division title, 2 playoff appearances, no playoff series wins. He's signed free agents. The biggest free agent signings in White Sox history were Dallas Keuchel and Yasmani Grandal. And we know where Dallas Keuchel is now, and I'm not really sure where and what Yasmani Grandal has to offer going forward. He has signed your young stars to be at the time, Yohan Moncada, to long-term deals for maximum money. And essentially, Yohan has certainly not lived up to those numbers. And you can't even think to trade him now. He's damaged goods at this point with saddled with that kind of contract. So Rick Hahn has worked himself into a corner essentially where, like you said, your window of opportunity is already closing and there's not really anywhere else to turn other than spending free agent money this offseason, which you're hoping that Jerry does. The farm system is, at least according to Major League Baseball, in as recently as August, is number 26 overall, only ahead of contending teams like the Braves and Houston and San Diego. You have 1 top 100 prospect, Colson Montgomery. This is my loaded asshole question, of course. But when do we have to wonder if Rick Hahn is qualified? Is he a good general manager? I've always thought he was, and gave him the benefit of the doubt. I'd love to give him shit over these years, but you look at the numbers, look at the facts, and where we're at. When is it time to start considering maybe he's not the guy for the job?
Well, I mean, all the longest question you've ever asked me is now over.
I gave you a lot of time to think.
Thankfully. But the numbers are the numbers, but I think here's where the problem comes in. Jerry Reinsdorf's the owner. And, Rick Hahn, when they need to add those additional assets that will push the team over the top, and this is why you're like, do you think Jerry's finally going to spend money? I don't know. And I think Rick Hahn, to a degree, is always going to have a little bit of a, I think it overall in baseball, because people know Jerry Reinsdorf's reputation of spending on free agents, that Rick Hahn is always going to have a little bit of a pass, I guess, in the fact that, they undercut Manny Machado. They make offers, but they never will go that $5 million more to bring that player over here. So they can get the press that they made $330 million, but you won't make $335 million offer to get the guy over here. Like, fuck off, right?
Well, and then Kenny comes to the media and tries to explain how whatever number that they offered is actually more than what.
Oh yeah, right.
Whatever that with Machado, I forget the numbers. He's trying to tell us $250 million is more than $300 million.
It's the new math. It's Kenny math. But yeah, so that's.
I'll stay out of White Sox business though.
Yeah, right. That's even more asinine, right? So, and it's just another fucking mark on what a mess, and it's truly. Everything about whatever's on the team that starts all the way up top, and it is just, now you want to talk about trickle down economics. This is trickle down baseball, baseball management, where the owner's stupidity trickles down to the president, trickles down to the GM, and then just trickles down into the ball club to where is it great that Jerry Reinsdorf is loyal? Sure, it's great, but it's to a fault. It's to a fault that is costing your team day in and day out. Like, if they sign Jose Abreu, it's fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. We have a logjam. Like, what would Andrew Vaughn's numbers be if he didn't have to deal with the mental stress of playing in the fucking outfield every day? Where would his numbers be offensively? Abreu is 36 years old. His power numbers have declined while his batting average and all that is high. I don't want Jose Abreu on the team hitting 14 home runs, no matter if he is like, he is a model player. He plays through pain, but he's 36 years old. And he's an RBI machine. But you know what? Someone else can have him if he continues to play. It's time to move on. They have to start making changes that move this team forward. And signing Jose Abreu to any sort of contract, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, any contract, it does not move the team forward. And the team needs to move forward in some way, shape, and form. And I think, honestly, I mean, I think Rick, for himself, needs to look for another job. Another job where he is supported, fully supported by the top brass.
Yeah, that was
where he has a little bit of autonomy.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Like,
fucking job.
Is he going to leave the White Sox before he could be held accountable for anything? Because he really, like you said, he's not going to be held accountable. That's not what the White Sox do. And there's legit reasons why he shouldn't be held accountable, because he hasn't been given the autonomy. So that, of course, begs the question that you already jumped to, is when does he get the fuck out? When does he get the chance to really spread his wings and do what he wants to do? He's always been under the shadow of Kenny Williams, and now he's been publicly hamstrung by Jerry Reinsdorf. So how long does he let his reputation get dragged out and before he can get out and do what he really wants to do? I don't know. That he was at one point, I think it was Sports Illustrated's top GM to be prospect, like in 2011 or something. He was like the hottest commodity on the market.
Yeah.
I forgot about this. The White Sox did not allow him to interview for the Mariners GM position at that point. They had promised him that he would be the White Sox GM, but they didn't even allow him to actually interview for it. So I'm wondering if things are going to be changing soon. If we might finally see Rick get fed up. What would that? How often do general managers just get up and quit? You see GMs get fired all the time. I just saw it in Detroit. I guess Theo Epstein would be the one example where he left a year before his contract expired in Chicago. But that'd be some interesting news. What I guess that would be another Ask Cole question. What would finally push Rick Hahn over the edge to actually tell Jerry to take his job and shove it?
I mean, I'm shocked it didn't. I'm shocked. I was actually. I never brought this up, but I actually thought he was maybe going to walk after the LaRussa thing. Because you remember how awkward
I was just
that press conference was?
The expression on his face.
After he had announced he was hired. I mean, everyone, it was fully covered that there's just this look of disappointment, and he didn't even really know how to answer the questions on the selection of LaRussa as manager.
I mean, he was essentially publicly neutered.
Yes, exactly.
By his owner, where all power was taken away from him and was just given the manager that had no interest in. Again, thank you very much for that, because now AJ Hinch is the Detroit Tigers manager. He was obviously your number one, or Rick Hahn's number one candidate at the time, but thanks for that. I'll always be thanking you for that one. But
well, yeah, we'll see if you will. But
well, I think you sufficiently answered my Ask Cole question, and I set that up cruelly and mercilessly, and I think you responded quite well. So Thank you for humoring me.
Word Hole Media.